Greetings, Starfighter. You have been recruited by the Star League to defend the frontier against Zur and the Kodan Armada.
Yeah.
Get ready. Prepare for blastoff. Prepare for target light track of the Starfighter.
The Last Starfighter hit cinemas in the United States on the 13th of July 1984, followed by its release in the UK later in November of the same year. With a budget of $14 million, the film only achieved a modest commercial success at the US box office, earning just under $29 million.
Come on, Alex, they're here!
Alex Rogan had a dream.
You really are leaving here, aren't you?
To be as far away from here as possible.
You get your chance. When it comes, you gotta grab it with both hands.
It started with a game.
You gonna bust the record.
But it wasn't just any game.
You have been recruited by the Star League to defend the frontier against Zur and the Kodan Armada.
And then one night,
Centauri's the name. We have to talk about a matter of utmost importance. Step into my office. I've seen him come and I've seen him go, but you're the best, my boy. Light years ahead of the competition.
Hey.
Alex didn't find his dream.
Hey, look out! Oh, dear.
His dream found him.
Where are we? Welcome to Rylos, my boy.
A world on the brink of destruction.
You were recruited by the Star League to
defend the frontier against Zur and the Kodan Armada.
Of all the life forms, on all the planets, in all the galaxies.
Oh my God!
One has been chosen. Alex Rogan.
Alex?
I'm Max.
Is the last Starfighter. For every Earthling who's ever imagined traveling beyond the stars.
Maybe there is a Starfighter left.
I love you, Alex Rogan.
Comes the unforgettable story of one who made it. The Last Starfighter.
American film critic Roger Ebert gave the film 2.5 stars out of 4, praising the actors but stating that the film was not original but well made. However, his reviewing partner Gene Siskel called it the best of all the Star Wars imitators. British reviewer Alan Jones of the Radio Times gave it 3 out of 5 stars, calling it a glossy space-age fairy tale with a touching love story that added depth to the intergalactic adventures, while the prestigious Halliwell's Film Guide described the film as a pleasing variation on the Star Wars franchise, with witty performances and elegant special effects. The film has left a lasting impression in movie history for its innovative use of CGI, during a time when the majority of special effects were created through practical methods, and despite receiving critical praise at the time, it wasn't until its home video release that it found an audience and has since become a cult classic. This popularity has led to various adaptations, including a movie novelization by Alan Dean Foster, a comic book adaptation by Marvel Comics, as well as a bizarre musical production in New York City in 2007. The film follows the story of a young man named Alex Rogan. He calls a trailer park home along with his mother Jane and younger brother Lewis. He lends a hand to his neighbours doing minor odd jobs, while he awaits news regarding a loan to attend college and move to the big city with his girlfriend Maggie. Sadly, he receives news that this student loan request has been denied. Whilst working through his frustration and disappointment, Alex breaks the high score of a Starfighter video game. This draws attention of the mysterious Centauri, who introduces himself as the game's inventor. He invites Alex for a ride in his flashy sports car, which unexpectedly transforms into a spacecraft. On his journey, Alex learns that the Starfighter game was a test to recruit skilled warriors to fight an intergalactic war for the Star League to defend the planet Rylos against the evil Zur and the Kodan Armada. Initially, Alex refuses the honour of becoming a starfighter and turns down the invitation and requests to leave the planet Rylos and quickly returns to Earth. Soon after returning, he is hunted by Zur's alien bounty hunters, the terrifying Xandozans, and he calls Centauri for help, only to discover that all the starfighters have fallen victim to a vicious attack on the starfighter base, and now Alex and his partner Grig are the galaxy's only hope to prevent the ruthless warlord Zur. The movie was directed by Nick Castle. The film was his first foray into big-budgeted science fiction. Castle had considerable experience in the film industry. He was not only known for his direction, but also for his acting and writing skills. In fact, he portrayed the shape-struck Michael Myers in John Carpenter's Halloween, and co-wrote the screenplay for Carpenter's Escape from New York. After directing this movie, Castle went on to direct the 1986 film The Boy Who Could Fly, and Dennis the Menace later in 1992. Screenwriter Jonathan R. Betchell's idea for the film was born out of his love for science fiction and his fascination with the legendary story of King Arthur. As he read T.H. White's The Book, The Once and Future King, he was struck by the notion of a modern-day sword in the stone and began to imagine what it might look like in the form of a video game. It was during a chance encounter with a kid playing a video game whilst in an arcade that Betchell's inspiration truly took hold. Watching the kid's intense focus and skillful gameplay, he imagined a scenario in which a young hero could achieve an unprecedented score and unlock the powers of the universe. After the modest success of the movie, Betchell wrote and directed the sci-fi adventure film My Science Project, which became a cult classic in its own right. He also directed the family comedy Theodore Rex, which, let's say, was less well received as his previous films. Initially, Castle loved Betchell's script. However, he made the decision to change the setting of Alex's hometown from the suburbs to a trailer park for several reasons. Firstly, he wanted to avoid using the same settings as other films from that era that were produced by Steven Spielberg, such as E.T. the Extraterrestrial, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and of course the Spielberg-produced Poltergeist. Secondly, he felt that the more isolated location would allow for Alex to have a larger and more relatable extended family, which in turn would increase the audience's connection to and support for him. He also changed the characters' names. Originally, Alex and Maggie were referred to as Skip and Penny. Castle found them too cartoonish as a result. Alex was later named after Betchell's son, while Lewis was named after Castle's son. The production company behind the film was Lorimar Productions, a division of Warner Brothers. However, it was distributed by Universal Pictures. Gary Adelson and Edward Ginault produced the film. Collectively, they produced The Big Easy and St. Elmo's Fire and Beverly Hills Cop 2. The character's name, Maggie, was inspired by producer Gary Adelson's wife, who has a minor role as the first Rylan Alex encounters at the Starfighter base. The film's cast were made up of well-known actors and talented newcomers. Lance Guest plays Alex Rogan. He was relatively unknown at the time of the film's release, but he went on to have a successful career. Castle was in search of the perfect actor to play Alex. After watching Halloween 2 during its post-production, he was impressed by Lance Guest's performance and asked his friend John Carpenter for the actor's identity. He felt that he had the charismatic qualities of Hollywood legends such as James Stewart, Henry Fonda, and Gary Cooper that he designed for the lead role. With that, he decided to cast Lance. He also appeared in several films, including the aforementioned Halloween 2 and the famously bad Jaws of Revenge. Robert Preston had already established himself as a prominent actor with a long list of film and television credits. The character of Centauri, a charming swindler in the movie, was specially crafted with Preston in mind, serving as a fitting tribute to his iconic portrayal of Professor Harold Hill in The Music Man. Interestingly, this marked Preston's last appearance in a theatrical film. It was a fitting and memorable way for the accomplished actor to end his career on the big screen. Dan O'Herlihy, who plays the ship's navigator Grig. O'Herlihy was an experienced actor who had also appeared in several high-profile films, including RoboCop and its sequel, and also Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. To bring his unique character to life, Dan had to wear prosthetics that severely limited his facial expressions. As a result, he had to exaggerate his facial movements in order to convey any emotion through them. Despite these challenges, Dan's performance as Grig was widely praised, and he helped make the character a beloved part of the movie. Catherine Mary Stewart plays Maggie. Stewart had also appeared in a number of other films throughout her career, including the cult horror film Night of the Comet, also in 1984. and also the romantic comedy Weekend at Bernie's in 1985. She also made appearances on television shows such as Days of Our Lives. Chris Herbert, who plays Alex's brother Lewis in the film, also went on to star in the short-lived TV series Otherworld. Norman Snow plays the evil warlord Zur. Norman also starred in Michael Mann's Manhunter in 1986. The supporting cast of character actors in the film is truly remarkable. Mark Alimo, famous for his role as Gul Dutak in several Star Trek Deep Space Nine episodes, makes a brief appearance as the mysterious hitchhiker who turns into a Xandu bounty hunter, while Will Wheaton, known for his role in Star Trek Next Generation, had a few lines of dialogue that were ultimately cut from the film. He can be seen in the background of several scenes. Other members of the cast have also guest starred in various Star Trek franchises, including Barbara Bronson, who plays Alex's mother, also starred in Hill Street Blues. Of particular note is Meg Wiley's Granny Gordon. She played one of the Telosian keepers in the original pilot The Cage in 1966. In addition to the aforementioned connection, there are further ties to Star Trek. Robert Fletcher designed the costumes in this film, known for his work on the first 4 Star Trek movies. As a result, you can see similarities between the two in terms of costume design. The cinematography was by King Baggott, who went on to work on Revenge of the Nerds. He made a cameo as he stands in as Alex Rogan's father in family photos used in the movie. The production took place over 38 days, with many of the scenes being filmed at night in Canyon County, California. The tunnel in the movie was the tunnel in Griffith Park in LA, the same one used for the Back to the Future movies. Nick Castle was very aware that this was a giant gamble to do so much in the computer while working on the assumption that they could achieve it. Castle hired Ron Cobb based on his connection with John Carpenter. Cobb had previously collaborated with Carpenter and Dan O'Bannon on Dark Star in 1974, as well as with O'Bannon on Alien in 1979. Cobb designed the Gunstar and other spaceships, as well as the film's sets, with input from Jim Bissell. Effects were created by Digital Productions under the stewardship of John Whitley Jr., who also served as producer on the film. The computer graphics for the film were created by a Cray XMP supercomputer to render the graphics. They created 27 minutes of effects for the film, which was considered a large amount of CGI at the time. For the 300 scenes that contained computer graphics, each frame of animation contained an average of 250,000 polygons. Digital Productions estimated that using the computer animation was only half the time and between a third to half the cost of traditional special effects. These effects were considered groundbreaking at the time of its release. The film's use of CGI allowed for the creation of highly detailed and realistic starships, and the creation of complex and thrilling action sequences, which were a key part of the film's appeal. However, with any groundbreaking endeavour, there were challenges to address these issues and long rendering times of these digital effects. Coordinator Jeffrey A. Ocon was enlisted for his assistance. He had a team of traditional effects creators at his disposal, ready to step in if they had encountered difficulties in handling the effect shots. Thankfully, these weren't needed, although parts of me would have liked to have seen the film with practical effects. Not all the special effects in the film were created using computer animation. The depiction of the beta unit before it took Alex's form was created through practical methods created by makeup artist Lance Anderson. The Star Car was actually based on a DeLorean. It was designed by Ron Cobb and constructed by Gene Winfield, who had created the spinners in Blade Runner. The car was built using a Volkswagen chassis and covered in sheet metal, but it wasn't particularly fast or smooth in terms of sound. To create the dynamic driving sequences, most of the shots of the Star Car were accelerated, accompanied by added sound effects to enhance its speed-like ambience. The digital rendition of the car was crafted from the original blueprints. Prior to this film, the only other film to utilise computer-generated imagery to this extent was Tron in 1982. However, The Last Starfighter was the first movie to use motion blur, which added a level of realism to the effects during the descent of the Star Car to Rylos. The score for the film is by Craig Safan. Safan's score for The Last Starfighter was a soaring and triumphant soundtrack that perfectly captured the excitement and adventure of the film. Safan's score also showcased his versatility as a composer, with similarities to his previous work on Remo, Armed and Dangerous. The use of grand orchestral arrangements and memorable themes were present in both scores, highlighting Safan's ability to create music that perfectly complemented the on-screen action. However, while Remo, Armed and Dangerous had a more light-hearted tone, The score for The Last Starfighter was grander in scale and more suited to the epic sci-fi setting of the film. Also, Sapan aimed to create a sound more grand than that of Star Wars, and it remains one of the most memorable and well-regarded film scores of the 1980s. I personally love the cue that's associated with Centauri, with its snake oil salesman charm. Its memorable themes, unique sound, and the use of classical-inspired pieces make it a timeless classic in the world of film scores. A certain amount of changes were done after filming had wrapped, leading to a significant portion of the beta unit scenes being filmed post-production due to positive feedback from test audiences, and the comic relief provided by these scenes was well received, and Castle believed that they added a unique twist to the conventional boy travels to outer space narrative. As a result of these scenes, Lance Guest can be seen wearing a wig in several of the beta unit scenes, as he had already trimmed his hair when those scenes were filmed. Also, the scene where the Rylan spy is being tortured and killed. This was originally designed to show the entire head melting away. However, due to extreme levels of graphic violence, the scene was not included in the final cut of the film. At the time of its release, PG-13 rated had not yet been established, and excessive violence would have resulted in an R rating. In November of 1984, when I was just 12 years old, The Last Starfighter was released in the UK. Having previously read the Marvel Comics adaptation in the Spider-Man comic a month earlier in October, I eagerly anticipated its arrival and thoroughly enjoyed it. I still vividly remember Lance Guest appearing on a UK Saturday morning kids show, possibly Saturday Superstore, as a guest promoting the movie. However, I was disappointed when he suggested that the film was made purely to showcase the CGI effects, as I felt this cheapened its overall value as a kid. I was instantly captivated by the film's wish fulfillment adventure. To this day, the movie holds a special place in my heart, and I have many fond memories of it. Upon reviewing the film many years later, while the story possesses certain weaknesses, such as its simplicity and lack of depth in the portrayal of the villain, the character Zur comes across as campy and spoilt, which further diminishes the overall impact of the narrative. To enhance the story's quality, it would have been beneficial to address these issues and introduce a more nuanced and multi-dimensional character, as well as exploring more intricate plot that engages the audience on a deeper level. Despite the limitations of budget, I feel the production design in certain areas could have benefited from further attention, sometimes looking like a TV movie. For instance, in the scene where Alex first encounters Grig, there's a prop featuring rotating beams that is commonly used in engineering sets, notably seen in 1982's Aeroplane 2, the sequel.
What have you found?
All I found is that these red lights keep moving back and forth. Aside from that, this thing seems to have no other function whatsoever, sir.
Well, that's impossible. It must have some sort of function. I mean, why would the government put all that money into a thing with red lights that keep going back and forth? Doesn't make any sense. Keep working on it.
Sir,
these lights keep blinking out of sequence, sir.
I see.
What should we do about it, sir?
Get them to blink in sequence.
You.
Additionally, the Starfighter base incorporates office chairs, which may not seamlessly blend with the overall aesthetic of Otherworldly. Furthermore, details like the translator given to Alex Rogan on Rylus is constructed using a circuit board from a digital watch, which may appear somewhat out of place. Another incident occurs when Grig attempts to restore the power after employing the Death Blossom, and a cable for a 9-volt battery is visibly connected to the circuit board in his hand. These minute details could have potentially caused distractions, even my childhood viewing experiences. Makeup effective is effective enough, with the design of the Rylons being a unique design, giving the impression of intelligence of the race. However, despite the marvellous effects, the film's strength lies in its human elements, which are very much in the vein of a Steven Spielberg movie. Nick Castle was keenly aware of Spielberg's influence, as well as that of George Lucas. At the centre of the story is Alex, a boy who's dreaming of leaving his small town life behind for an adventure. This human aspect makes for an intriguing and relatable story. The film also contains several not-so-subtle allusions to the 1939 classic The Wizard of Oz. Maggie's attire, with her blue gingham shirt and braids, is reminiscent of Dorothy's. Additionally, the floating head of Zur in Starfighter Command has been compared to the wizard's floating head in the original film. The Last Starfighter is also part of a larger trend in science fiction movies of the 1980s, which incorporated wish fulfillment tropes. Other films, such as Joe Dante's Explorers and Flight of the Navigator, which also explored the idea of journeying through a fantastical world and then finding one's way home. I was surprised to learn many years later that The Last Starfighter was not a massive success, like many movies of the era, such as Krull. These movies were a massive influence on my cinema-going experience as a kid. But like The Last Starfighter, the two found an audience on their home video release, and they too since have become cult classics. It makes sense now why there seemed a distinct lack of merchandise associated with the movie at the time. Galoob did create prototype action figures, but they were never produced because retailers did not believe that the movie would be successful. The figures included Alex Rogan, Trailer Park and Starfighter outfits, Maggie, Centauri, Grig, Zur, Brill, Ikodan, the tentacled Starfighter, the two Xandazans and an Endorian. These were planned to be released in 2-figure packs. Ultimately, when the movie was a modest success, it was too late to produce the toys. Even the promised video game promoted at the end credits never fully materialised. Home versions of the game for the Atari 8-bit home consoles and computers were developed but never commercially released under the Starfighter name. Eventually renamed and released with some minor changes as Star Raiders 2, and a prototype exists for the Atari 2600, the Last Starfighter game, which was in actual game already in development by Atari under the name Universe. This game was eventually released as Solaris. A NES game entitled The Last Starfighter was released, but it was actually a conversion of Iridium for the Commodore 64 with modified sprites, title screen and soundtrack. Although a freeware playable version of the game, based on what is seen in the film, was released for the PC in 2007. The creators of the game, Rogue Synapsis, have also built a working arcade cabinet of the game as seen in the movie. Various Hollywood directors and screenwriters have shown enthusiasm for creating a sequel or a remake of the film, while Jonathan Betchwell has expressed his disinterest towards such endeavours. Adding to the complexity, the rights to the film have not been established. While the concept of continuing the story was initially thrilling, it is important to consider the current landscape of the Hollywood film industry. Many classic intellectual properties have received lackluster sequels that fail to capture the essence of the originals. Given these circumstances, it's more safer to preserve the film's legacy in the cherished memories of its fans, rather than risk diluting its impact with potentially disappointing follow-ups. The Last Starfighter received a 76% approval rating on review website Rotten Tomatoes, based on 86 reviews, with an average rating of 6.6 out of 10. The website's critical consensus stated that although the film was derivative of other sci-fi franchises, its boundary-pushing visual effects and charming tone make for an enjoyable experience. You can find a great edition of the film with a 4K Blu-ray by Arrow Video. Unfortunately, it's not available in the UK due to the rights with distribution. However, the 25th anniversary Blu-ray has a great transfer too. Although I'd like to see an update of the effects, as today they look like cutscenes from an old PlayStation game. It's an important film in the history of science fiction. At the time, widely praised for its innovative use of CGI and thrilling action sequences. Despite the movie's weaknesses, its talented cast and its visionary director, who brought a unique vision to the genre, the film's strength comes from not its groundbreaking special effects, but the film's blend of humour and science fiction and great storytelling, making it a must-see for anyone who loves the genre. And its at times themes of bravery, friendship and love make it a film that will continue to be relevant for generations to come, and its legacy continues to this day, making The Last Starfighter an easy recommendation and fully deserving of its cult classic status.
Life support good. Ammo packs a peak.
Think we gotta use Death Blossom.
Remember, Death Blossom delivers only one massive volley at close range. Theoretically.
What do you mean, theoretically?
After all, DB has never been tested. It might overload the systems. Blow up the ship.
What are you worried about, Greek? Theoretically, we should already be dead.
Open Death Blossom petals. Switch is on.
Don't forget to leave a comment on your experience of this movie, and if you enjoyed the video, please like, share and subscribe if you would like to enjoy more future reviews. Take care, and I will speak to you soon on my next review. Thanks for watching.